Okay, so in this video, you're going to hear Moeletsi Mbeki calling out a very common deception in South Africa. And if you stay with me until my biblical reaction, you'll probably end up with a video that you want to bookmark, because between now and 2026, 2029, you are going to have 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 conversations where you're going to think, I want to send that video to this person, because this will come up. So bookmark it so you can send it to them, because South Africa will prosper. You ready to see it go down? Okay, good. Press like. Let's go. Let's start with Professor JJ Tabane at the State of the Nation breakfast with Mike Sham. Listen to this.
Our state of a nation is depressed, it's distressed, and is leaderless. Those are my 3 captions of how we should understand ourselves right now. We are distressed and depressed, mostly because of people, half of our population lives below the bread line. And I don't expect any of you who came to a breakfast, 5-star breakfast like this, to understand that. When somebody is below the bread line, literally it means you don't have money for bread. But below the bread line. People like yourself will not really appreciate that after 2-course breakfast. Why are we leaderless? It's easy to say, oh, leaderless because, we're led by lunatics. In fact, Rob says, it was very polite today. I don't know what happened to him. But in one of the podcasts that I listened to, of what he was saying, he said the lunatics are running the asylum. I think for me that's an easy answer, right? That government is also useless and private sector is also fantastic. And later on I'll deal with that myth a little more. But we are leaderless across the board. We're not just leaderless in government. We are leaderless in civil society. We are leaderless in business, right? And we are leaderless in government. Let me start with civil society.
Sounds fair. Sounds balanced. Sounds like someone who's concerned about people living below the breadline. We should all ask ourselves, why is it that some people are living below the breadline? These are the questions that we must all ask ourselves, and we must be prepared. Be prepared to answer. And when you hear it, it just sounds so reasonable. It's not just government. It's all of us. Hear it at the Moeletsi Mbeki event here.
It is heartbreaking to know that as a country we are sitting at 50% unemployment, people who are below 35 years. That to me is scaring me to the bones. I'm trying to understand what is it that is making our government unable to create environment that will give opportunities to employment. What is holding us to industrialize? We come from an era where there were ISCOs and rainbows and what do we need as a government to create jobs for our children? During our days in the 60s and 70s, none of us went working. I don't know how apartheid balanced it. It was a winner to pass JC. We have a lot of my age that didn't go through Standard 6, but they were all employed. They were all employed, earning that little, but they were earning. We are now faced with a scenario. My firstborn child passed or graduated or was born in 80. So all children that are born from 1980 to the 2Ks, almost 70% of them are unemployed, learned as they are, with degrees and diplomas and all qualifications that we have achieved over 30 years. But why is it that they're unemployed? Those that have qualified as teachers are unemployed. In the hospitals, there are nurses that are no longer training within the hospital environment, but they're training privately, but hospitals cannot absorb them. I'm trying to understand, where did we lose it to ensure that those that are qualified are working? I'm trying to understand the business people and the politicians, what is making us fail to create a working environment for our people, who will then be taxed to address the GDP that Mbeki you are talking about. What made people to go? There was something that was called Kwatepa. Those that couldn't make up to standard 2, somehow were taken by Kwatepa and they worked. What has happened that has changed that? And what hurts most is that the number of people that are unemployed, learned as they are, they've been reduced to drug addicts, to a lot of crime that is out there, because they've been waiting. A child with BSc has waited from 2005 to be employed, but is not getting anywhere. So that has made that child to change. Why are we unable to address the 50% of unemployment rate that was reflected there, so that we see the GDP going up?
Maybe the next speaker is going to come to her defense. Listen.
I just want to answer some of your concerns. And there's this big elephant in the room which we are not addressing, which is corruption. And the reason why we've got a failed state, it's not because of the ANC, it's the partnership between the ANC and the white capital. There is no way you can have corruption in government without the participation of business. It's impossible. So it is important that corruption doesn't trap us as a nation, because we've got corruption in banks, in auditing firms, in the judiciary, everywhere in South Africa there's corruption. So if government wants to be corrupt, it needs a partner. And that partner is who? And somehow that has never been brought to the surface. It's always the ANC is corrupt. It needs a partner to be corrupt. So if people are able to buy Ferraris worth 5 million rands of cash, who provides that cash? It's the bank. And what does the bank say about that? You know, so when it comes to the government trying to bring about any correction in terms of whatever black empowerment or black business, remember the Isibaya Fund by the PIC? When you look at every government solution, there is corruption in it. This is why it collapses. So you find that some things are overfunded or are front-loaded, so that whoever applies for that funding cannot afford to pay back that, because there are kickbacks. So if you go to the PIC and you go and make a loan from the PIC, then you need to have partners within the PIC itself that you've got to pay. And this is what is creating this whole collapse of whatever solution, in inverted commas, that government wants to bring to the fore. Even when it came to the farmers, when government was trying to provide funding to buy farms for black people. For my sins, when I was younger, I was chairperson of the Italia Development Corporation. There were so many farms that were bought from white farmers, and the corruption was between who? Government, the white farmer, and the purchaser. And that's why it collapsed. A farm that was supposed to be 10 million was 20, and the 10 was split between the three parties. And 69 billion, if I'm not mistaken, has been spent by government trying to acquire farms from white farmers. And all those farms have collapsed. And who has become rich? The white farmers. And what happens? They buy them back because they've collapsed. And the government wasn't there even to monitor whether after the farm was purchased, was the equipment there, was the skills transfer which was part of the agreement, did it happen? No, it didn't. So if we all as South Africans, both black and white, can stay away from corruption, because we seem to have embraced corruption as a nation. Let us be honest. It's not a black problem. It's not an ANC problem. It's the South African problem.
Whew. If Mr. Mbeki doesn't answer this in the next 1 second, I will break these lights and cameras.
Corruption is a huge problem in our country. It's a mega problem, and it is very destructive. It destroys so many things. It's a game any number can play, and I agree the private sector is guilty, but at the end of the day, if you are the government of South Africa, that's where the moral responsibility sits. You can't absolve yourself and bouncing it around and say somebody else is responsible. If you are the government of South Africa, you are elected by the people to make sure the rule of law is maintained, and that corruption is overcome. So we can't blame the private sector. At the end of the day, it's the responsibility of the elected government to make sure rule of law is implemented in the country.
There we go. The problem with this false neutrality is when someone positions themselves as neutral so that they can deceitfully pass through a lie. This is like someone saying there's a teacher who is charging students in primary school or whatever to give them a pass mark. And then someone says, oh, you see, it takes two to tango. The teacher is taking money and the student is taking false marks. The student is not responsible at school. The teacher is. The only reason why parents leave teachers at school is because the trust sits with the teacher. These people are the type who will hear that a parent is abusing a child and they will say, oh, this parent is bad, but hey, children can be naughty too. The responsibility sits with the parent. Leave the child out of it. If there is corruption between two businesses, well, let's talk about both. And we talk about both because we want to figure out how we report both to the government. But if there is corruption between government and anything else, we no longer discuss the anything else because the anything else is not responsible. There is no business that threatens to put me in jail if I don't keep their rules. There is no business that forces me to pay tax whether I want to or not. There is no business whose product I can't just dump and stop buying if I don't like what they're doing. Government has coercive power. It can put you in jail. Government promised you jobs. government promised you rule of law. No business promised you rule of law. Why am I getting worked up with this? I'm getting worked up with this because, see, their tongue is an arrow shot out. It speaks deceit. One speaks peaceably to his neighbor with his mouth, but in his heart lies in wait. The reason why I get worked up with this deception, number one, to whom much is given, much is required. This kind of sick reasoning, sick logic, hides who carries responsibility. Number two, it is immoral. It is a moral inversion because business can't force anyone to do anything. Government can. Now, to then try put them on an equal footing, playing like you're just being fair, it is deceptive. It is immoral. It is a moral inversion. And lastly, it excuses government failure and corruption. You want to know why the ANC has managed to do so much corruption? It is because of all the speakers you heard. I'm not saying this to knock anyone, but I'm saying it to bring it to light. Because most of the deception in South Africa comes from this deceitful, immoral trick that hides where the duty lies, that hides where the moral responsibility lies, that hides who promised this and is responsible and forced us to pay them to deliver that promise, because the person says, I promise to deliver an environment that will not have people unemployed. I promise to deliver an environment of law and order. To then come after all of that and say, no, we all need to ask ourselves, why are there no jobs? We all need to ask ourselves, why is there so much corruption? Can I get a refund for everything I've ever bought? And everything can be cheaper. Could you please refund me 15% of every cent I've ever spent since birth buying a promise of law and order, buying a promise of whatever is promised by government. Now to come back and say, no, it's just everybody. This is an immoral, dishonest, deceitful, sick logic destroying this country. So, no man can serve two masters. Either you'll love the one or hate the other, or you'll despise the one and honor the other. You cannot serve God and Karl Marx. This sick logic is Marxist logic. Let me hear your comments below and make sure you're subscribed so that you can see our daily posts that our subscribers get to enjoy every day. All right, got worked up, didn't I? Let's make history together. Whew. This was punishing.